Bitcoin was touted as the currency of the future. A resurgence in value saw it worth about $60,000, only for it to crash down to about $35,000 in the last month. There are three reasons for this. One is that cryptocurrencies are incredibly volatile, being valued extrinsically based on what people think they're worth, and have little real-world usage. Its value was undermined by Tesla CEO Elon Musk tweeting that the electric vehicle firm would no longer accept payment in Bitcoin for its products. Musk's reason for this presents Bitcoin's second big problem. The process of mining and verifying payments is extremely energy intensive and bad for the environment. The third reason is that states like China, who have a big problem with the currency's decentralization, would prefer to use their own digital currency as they have more control over what can be bought with it. Some see this as the doom of cryptocurrency, but I'm going to go through a few reasons as to why this might not be the case, and even if it is the end of Bitcoin, digital currencies will continue. To prove that Bitcoin still has the potential to be viable, I've first got to address the problem with its value. Now, all investment is risky, and most people would advise that you only ever invest what you can afford to lose, but this is doubly true with Bitcoin, where huge changes in its value can see your capital wiped out overnight. Because of this instability, it's kind of disingenuous to even call Bitcoin a currency. The first purchase made with them were 2 pizzas which cost 10,000 Bitcoins, which would mean today they'd be worth about $35 million. Now, because of the long transaction times as well, the value of the product you're buying can change before your payment is even verified as well, making it just, extremely unusable as a currency. Basically, it's extrinsically valued. We collectively decide what it's worth based on how much we want it and how much of it there is in circulation. And you could basically make the argument that all money is like this, because in the current system we have what's called fiat currencies, where they're not backed by gold or silver like they were in the past, and instead the central bank decides how much money is in circulation. So, all the money that we have is technically worthless. But that being said, it's kind of incomparable, because Elon Musk nearly halved the value of Bitcoin with a single tweet. Now imagine that tomorrow Elon Musk tweets out the US dollar's rubbish. Right, that's not going to have any impact on its value at all. So if it can't be used as a currency, how can I even entertain the fact that it might be worth something? Well, it can't really be compared to cash, but in theory, Bitcoin could be compared to gold. In a recent issue of The Economist, they wrote that, like Bitcoin, gold bars only have value because we tacitly agree that they do. And there was a prominent economist called William Beuter who once aptly called gold the 6,000-year-old bubble. Gold had a clear value when it backed the world's money, but now its value is mostly extrinsic. Like, yeah, it's rare and it's pretty and you can use it to make a lot more things than you can use a Bitcoin for, but at the same time, if you slap down a gold bar to buy a Tesla, you're going to get some really funny looks. Yet at the same time, gold is still invested in heavily because it has quite a stable price. And there's an argument that if Bitcoin had the same sort of stable price, and it is a big if, but if it did, then it could be made, a similar sort of investment. Another reason why there's still a lot of support for Bitcoin is because of the idea itself. It was first envisioned in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, when people were looking for a way to make payments online without trusting, banks to act as middlemen. In a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, which is basically the Bitcoin manifesto, it writes that while the current system works well enough for most transactions, it still suffers from the inherent weakness of the trust-based model. A certain percentage of fraud is accepted as unavoidable. These costs and payment uncertainties can be avoided in person by using a physical currency, but no mechanism exists to make payments over a communications channel without a trusted party. Basically, it's a fairly anarchist system which says we shouldn't trust central banks to verify our payments for us, and instead Bitcoin payments are verified through what's known as the blockchain. And this is a pretty complicated idea, but what it essentially is instead of having a centralized system which goes, yep, this money is going here, you have a group of independent ledgers who all work together to verify a payment against a sort of master spreadsheet to make sure that the payee definitely has the money to purchase whatever it is they're purchasing. It's really clever, but there are 3 huge problems, with the first being that it's incredibly time consuming using a currency which is incredibly volatile with a value that can change at any minute. It's just the fact that banks do this quicker and that other currencies are much more stable than crypto. Second, without a central bank and using encrypted currency, which can be incredibly hard to trace, people can buy pretty much anything with it on the dark web, and people have been found to buy things like illegal drugs and child pornography, and creating channels of access to these sort of materials can make people extremely nervous, and justifiably so, and this can lead to governments implementing bans, as China did in 2017. The third problem, which is probably the most pressing for people like Elon Musk, is how energy intensive the entire process is, because to verify a payment it takes a lot of different people and a lot of different computers doing a lot of different complex calculations. According to The Economist, Bitcoin mining globally emits the same amount of greenhouse gases as the entire territory of Hong Kong. The Independent reported on a study which said that these concerns are overrated and that traditional banking produces more greenhouse gases than Bitcoin verification does, but this is pretty obvious because Bitcoins are really, really niche, right? They have less than 19 million of them in circulation and somewhere in the trillions of dollars of traditional currency, and even then Bitcoin is producing nearly as many greenhouse gases as traditional banking, so we can assume that if more Bitcoin was being used and it was being used more frequently, then this greenhouse gas emission would skyrocket. As well as this study was produced by a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency investment firm, and they've admitted that it's not as easy to gauge the energy use of these two industries as it is to audit Bitcoin. There's been a crypto climate accord which aims to only use renewable energy by the year 2025, but with it being a decentralized system, I'm not entirely sure how well this would work. Now, of course, there is pressure from companies like Tesla, which will no longer accept Bitcoin and therefore delegitimize them as a currency, so who knows, maybe this will work, and obviously, they've recognized the problem and they're trying to do the right thing, but there's no guarantee with it, essentially. There are also cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, which are trying to use less energy intensive algorithms to verify their purchases, but really I think environmentalism, along with the other two problems, is going to keep cryptocurrencies in a niche for now. Yet despite this, the idea of digital currency is not dead. Both the UK and China have started exploring their own to look to ways to replacing cash. Now, there is a key difference between digital currencies and cryptocurrencies, with the most obvious being that digital currencies would in theory be issued by a central bank rather than be a completely decentralized system, and one would assume as well that payments wouldn't be made over the blockchain but instead through high street banks, although no one really seems sure. The Independent wrote that Britain was thinking about introducing its so-called Brit coin, as by the end of the 2020s cash payments would only make up about 10% of transactions, and it's a pretty similar story in China with the digital yuan. CNBC reported that it's effectively a way for the central bank to digitalise banknotes and coins. The Deputy Governor of China's central bank said there's a pressing need to digitalise cash and coin, as producing and storing these is currently expensive. Cash and coins are not easy to use, they're easy to counterfeit, and because of their anonymity, could be used for illicit purposes. The last bit explains why some people are worried about the digital one, because while most governments would stop their citizens from buying things like illegal drugs, China could in theory use it to freeze the assets of dissidents and control their citizens who don't actually live in China. For example, there's a YouTube video by The Economist where it says it's pretty easy to imagine a world in which Chinese people all have to use digital yuan and they can't use it to buy things like foreign books or foreign newspapers, and therefore, essentially extending that ban around the world. The centralised nature of the currency also makes it more susceptible to cyber warfare in a way that cash just isn't, but at the same time, while we do need to deal with these problems, the benefits of a digital currency can't be ignored, right? We can't continue to store cash, which is really expensive when we don't use it, and we do need something to back up our card payments, so we're not essentially just trading numbers. And therefore, I do think that economies are going to start digitalising at a faster rate in the near future. Thank you so much for watching. This is Wyver Joe. It's a channel where I talk about, film history, politics, current affairs, and things like that. If that's your cup of tea, which I assume it must be because you made it all the way here to the end, then why not click subscribe and ring the bell and the next time I make a video. Also, don't forget to check out my weekly column on We Are Writers. It's out on Wednesdays. I mostly cover British politics, but I do recommend my article on conservation, yet another one that I accidentally shared with The Economist. And also follow me on Twitter, because if I want to be a journalist, I've got to have Twitter, really, haven't I?